Welcome back to Silent Ruptor. I hope you all are enjoying Affinity Chaos and Necromancer of the Shadows. Consider subscribing the channel and leave a like. Let's continue Necromancer of the Shadows. Chapter 1091 Origin Rune Essence Part 2. Using the invisibility effect of Shadow Walk, Evan's clone easily arrived in the underground basement of the Federation building. As he walked through the basement, even Evan was surprised by the numerous formations and barriers designed to protect the area. However, all of these barriers and formations were useless in front of him, and without alerting anyone, he finally passed through all the barriers and arrived in a slightly open area of the basement. The open area of the basement was filled with iron shelves, each holding various strange items. Evan took a look around and found that most of the items on shelves were high-end, rare materials extracted from monsters, such as the horn of an S-rank monster which could be used to create a high-level artifact. There were also rare herbs, ranging from B to S rank, placed in glass cases to preserve their medicinal properties, as well as potions, pills, skill scrolls, and other artifacts. All in all, the area looked like the Federation's treasury. If anyone else besides Evan, including an S+ rank hunter, came here, they would definitely be shocked by the abundance of valuable items. However, when Evan looked at them, his eyes remained indifferent because none of these things were of any use to him. After taking a brief look around, he spread his spiritual senses and tried to locate the portal that Valerie had mentioned. However, once just like before, he once again found nothing. Evan's expression didn't change when he wasn't able to find the portal, as he had already anticipated this. His shadow flickered slightly, and suddenly, Eclipse, Kazel, and a few other shadow undeads who were skilled at hiding appeared. Once the shadow undeads appeared, they didn't need Evan to say anything. They already knew what they had to do and silently dispersed, searching the basement. Evan also moved deeper into the basement and discovered that it was far larger than he had expected, covering nearly 10 square kilometers. N-O-V-E-N.C-O-M. The concentration of mana in this place is normal, and it doesn't seem like there is a dungeon anywhere near this area. Evan muttered with a frown on his face as he ventured further into the basement. The chaotic energy of a dungeon usually causes the surrounding mana to be in great turmoil, but upon sensing the mana in the underground basement, Evan didn't detect anything unusual, which made him wonder if something had happened to the dungeon Valerie had talked about. While Evan continued his search for the dungeon, his shadow undeads were also carefully searching other directions, trying to find any concealed formations or hidden objects in the surroundings. Evan had only been walking for about 5 minutes when suddenly, he sensed something and his gaze shifted toward one of the iron shelves not far from him. "What's there?" he muttered quietly, walking toward the shelf as he felt something calling to him. Soon, Evan arrived in front of the iron shelf and saw a glass box containing a small purple-colored orb, which seemed to be made from a monster's bone. The orb was just 5 centimeters in diameter, with some small, strange lines engraved on 1/4 of its surface. There was nothing visibly special about it, no energy fluctuations or light emanated from the orb, as if it were an ordinary object. But when Evan looked at the ordinary-looking orb, particularly the part covered in strange lines, he felt an inexplicable urge to pick it up and devour it, as if something inside him wanted to consume the orb. Is this orb a monster core? Evan wondered aloud, because until now, the only thing that had given him this kind of feeling was monster cores when he was a low-level hunter. When he had just awakened his monarch physique a few years ago, he would often feel the urge to devour cores whenever he saw them because they could increase his strength. This small orb was giving him the same sensation. Sensing that this item might be useful to him, Evan didn't hesitate, and after confirming there were no formations around the glass box that would alert anyone, he lightly tapped the glass. Crack, 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 cracks spread across the glass box, and it instantly shattered into small fragments. Evan looked down at the small orb lying among the shattered glass and picked it up. Because Evan and his clone were connected, the moment his clone picked up the orb, the real Evan felt a strong urge to summon his clone back and consume the small orb. However, since he was still engaged in a conversation with Boris and the others, he suppressed his urge and first tried to examine the orb to understand what it was. As Evan's clone inspected the small orb in his hand, a series of transparent texts appeared before him, revealing the orb's information. Fragment of the Origin Rune Essence, one of the 4 fragments of a broken Origin Rune Essence. Gathering all 4 Origin Rune Essence fragments can form a complete Origin Rune Essence. The complete Origin Rune Essence can be used to evolve a primordial rune into an Origin Rune. Typically, the expression of Evan's clone remained indifferent all the time, but when he saw the information about the small orb he was holding, his eyes widened in shock. Something that can evolve a primordial rune into an Origin Rune. he muttered in a shocked voice, instantly thinking of the Rune of Evolution. When Evan had met Azeroth in the Tomb of the Ancient, Azeroth had told him that the Rune of Evolution was one of the strongest primordial runes, and the information from the small orb indicated that it could evolve a primordial rune into an origin rune. If I can gather all 4 parts of this origin rune essence. Evan muttered quietly, his eyes beginning to shine with anticipation. Just as he was thinking about the origin rune essence, he received a message from Eclipse and his lips curved upwards. Found it. Chapter 1092 Strange Portal. Evan's clone looked at the small orb with excitement on his face and took a deep breath. If I gather all 4 fragments of the origin rune essence, I will be able to evolve the Rune of Evolution. He muttered in a low voice, feeling excited just thinking about what kind of changes it would bring if he evolved his rune. The effects of the Rune of Evolution were already quite powerful. Although it hadn't helped him much since he became a rank 1 core evolver, he felt that if he evolved it once again, it would definitely bring earth-shattering changes to its effects. Just when Evan was thinking about the Rune of Evolution, he received a message from Eclipse, whom he had released earlier, and his lips arched upwards. Found it, he said to himself and dropped the small orb of origin rune essence into his shadow storage, sending it to the real Evan, who was still in the meeting room with Boris and the others. After the meeting, I need to ask Boris where he got this orb. Evan's clone muttered and headed in Eclipse's direction. In just a few seconds, he arrived at Eclipse's location and was shocked because a dungeon portal, 2 meters tall and 1 meter wide, was glowing in front of him. He was not shocked because of the dungeon portal itself. The reason he was shocked was that this portal was not releasing any kind of energy fluctuations, and there wasn't even a single concealment formation around it. But even though there wasn't any concealment formation around the portal, Evan still couldn't feel its presence. If it weren't for the fact that he was looking at the portal with his own eyes, he wouldn't have even realized there was a portal here. He used his spiritual senses to examine the area where the portal was located and found that his spiritual senses couldn't detect anything. Through his spiritual senses, all he saw was an empty space with nothing there. It's good that I decided to come here when I didn't find the dungeon portal through my spiritual senses. If I had ignored this place after not finding it through my spiritual senses. Evan muttered in a low voice and shook his head. He walked closer to the portal but didn't enter immediately. Instead, he first walked around the portal, trying to find out why this portal was not releasing any energy fluctuations or why he couldn't sense its presence using his spiritual senses, even though it wasn't protected by a formation. There is really something strange about this portal. It's like, it's here, but not here at the same time. Evan said with a frown on his face. The dungeon portal in front of him was very strange. Even though it looked as if it was in front of him, Evan had the feeling that this portal was not really here and that what he was looking at was just a mere projection. Projection. Suddenly, Evan's eyes widened and he immediately thought about the Tower of Ascension. When Evan first used the Tower of Ascension in Aurora World and went to the World Domain, he learned that the Towers of Ascension located in all the lower worlds were just projections and that the real Tower of Ascension was located in the middle of the World Domain, which he later used to go to Utopia. Although at that time Evan didn't feel anything wrong with the Tower of Ascension located in Aurora World because his rank was very low, he could now tell that the portal in front of him was similar to the tower located in Aurora World. Since this portal is just a projection like the Tower of Ascension, does it mean that once I enter, I will be sent to the place where the real portal of this dungeon is located? He muttered with a thoughtful look on his face. But he felt something was not right. When Valerie told him about this dungeon, she didn't mention anything about being sent to another place. She told him that upon entering the portal, he would be sent inside a dungeon where he could get an energy pearl, and by using that energy pearl, he could increase the rank of his core to S+ rank. Although I feel like this portal is a little different from what Valerie told me, I still need to go in and take a look. Evan said to himself and took a step forward, trying to enter the dungeon. But the moment the clone touched the portal, a repelling force erupted from it, pushing him backwards. Evan raised an eyebrow when he was pushed back and tried to enter again. But, similar to before, he was once again pushed back. What's going on? Evan frowned when he wasn't able to enter the projection of the portal and looked at Eclipse, who was beside him. Try to go in. Receiving Evan's order, Eclipse didn't hesitate and rushed toward the portal, immediately passing through it without any problem. Evan was surprised when Eclipse successfully entered the portal, but before he could think anything else, he lost his connection with Eclipse, meaning it had died the moment it entered the portal. What the fuck? Are there monsters waiting to ambush people who enter the portals? Evan cursed under his breath and summoned Eclipse back, consuming his world essence. After summoning back Eclipse, he asked what had happened after entering the portal, and Eclipse told him that it didn't reach the other end of the portal and was torn apart in the middle. This portal is really different from what Valerie told me, or could it be that this portal is acting differently because of me? The clone thought and immediately sent all the information to Evan, who was in the meeting room. After sending the information, the clone received the order from Evan to search the basement to see if there was another portal and he would come to look at the portal after the end of the meeting. Once the clone received Evan's order, he looked at the portal one last time and then left, searching the underground basement to look for another portal. At the same time, on the top floor of the Federation building, the meeting that had been going on for around half an hour also came to an end. Chapter 1093 Blood Dungeon. When Evan said that the portals appearing across the earth had nothing to do with him, many hunters didn't believe his words. Evan could see that they did not believe him, but he didn't care about their doubts. Even if they didn't believe him, it wasn't as if they could do anything to him. However, to ensure that they wouldn't do anything foolish or try to withhold information from him, Evan told them that as long as they provided the information he needed, he would help them clear out the high-level monsters currently filling the earth. Most of the hunters were shocked when they heard Evan, but when they remembered his power and the fact that he could even control the powerful black monsters that had captured the Glassifern people emerging from the portals, they also believed that it wouldn't be difficult for him to help them clear the high-level monsters. After Evan offered to clear the high-level monsters, although there were minor disagreements between him and the other hunters, nothing major happened, and Boris agreed to give him the information he wanted. Boris also asked if Evan would help them if more Glassifern people emerged from the portals again. To this question, even though he didn't want to, Evan had no choice but to agree. The reason for this was because, after what Valerie told him about her dreams and his speculations, he was certain that Winterclaw was somehow related to the lowly primordial whom Azeroth had defeated. Since this matter was related to Azeroth, he had to take care of it, otherwise, if Winterclaw succeeded in whatever he was planning, it would bring great trouble to him in the future. As Boris agreed to give him the information, after a brief discussion, the hunters who were present in the meeting started to leave. As the projections of the hunters who joined the meeting virtually were disappearing, Evan's eyes shifted toward a tall, bulky, bald man and his black irises started to spin like swirling vortexes. Looking at the bald man using the eyes of Abyss for a few seconds, Evan took a deep breath and his eyes returned to normal. I need to see him in person to confirm my guess. He thought and looked at Boris and the four hunters who were the only ones left in the meeting room, other than him and Valerie. If you don't mind, I want to talk to you about something, Evan said to Boris once the projections of the hunters disappeared. Boris raised an eyebrow when he heard Evan and nodded his head. Seeing Boris nod, Evan didn't speak immediately. Instead, he looked at the four other hunters who were still in the room and said calmly, I want to talk to you alone. Hearing Evan, the four hunters frowned and were about to say something, but before they could, Boris said in a calm voice. You guys go ahead, I will meet you after some time. But, don't worry, I have no intention of harming him. I just want to ask him about something, Evan said before the four hunters could protest, and green wind covered their bodies. Suddenly, the door of the meeting room opened, the scene in front of the four hunters changed, and when they regained their senses, they found themselves standing outside of the room, and the door was closed. Fouquet, what kind of power is this? A short, red-haired hunter swore while sweating profusely. The other three hunters also felt a chill run down their spines because all of them realized that if, instead of sending them out, Evan had decided to attack them, they wouldn't have even gotten a chance to react before losing their lives. Boris was also a little shocked when the four hunters suddenly disappeared from the room, but he could feel their auras from the outside, so he didn't panic and just sighed inwardly. What else do you want to know? He asked while looking at the black-haired man in front of him. Evan stretched his hand upon hearing Boris, and a purple-colored orb that looked as if it was made of monster bone shot out of his shadow, and he caught it in his hand. I just took a walk to the underground basement of this building and found this thing. He said as he showed the fragment of the origin rune essence to Boris. I want to know where you got this thing. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. Took a walk into the underground basement of the building. Boris was stunned when he heard Evan. Although he didn't know when Evan went to the underground basement, his face still turned slightly ugly upon thinking about all the precious things that were in the underground basement, thinking Evan might have stolen a few of them. Seeing Boris's ugly expression, Evan immediately understood what he was thinking and his mouth twitched a little. Don't worry, other than this thing, I didn't take anything else from that basement, as those things are useless to me. Evan said and took out some low-level rank 1 healing pills, potions, and a few other things that Amara made in her free time and placed them in front of Boris. I will give you these things in return for taking this orb, he said as he sent the potions and other things in front of Boris. Although they were just low-level rank 1 pills and potions, for Boris, who was merely an S+ rank hunter, the rich aura emanating from the potions and pills was shocking. At first glance, he could tell that these items were far superior to S-rank potions. Boris took a deep breath to calm himself, but he didn't immediately pick up the pills and potions that Evan had sent toward him. Instead, he looked at the small purple orb that Evan was holding and used his bracelet to scan it. As the bracelet scanned the fragment of the origin rune essence, its records about where it came from and other details appeared before Boris. Boris slightly raised his eyebrows when he saw the records of the purple orb and sent its details to Evan. I have sent you the details about it. You can check it out on your bracelet. Evan looked at his bracelet and soon found the information that Boris had sent. His eyes swept through the details and stopped on the information he wanted to know. Was found in the Blood Dungeon, the first dungeon that appeared on Earth in Florida. Chapter 1094 Danger. Part 1. Evan was stunned when he saw that the fragment of the origin rune essence had actually been found in the Blood Dungeon, the first dungeon that appeared on Earth. It was the same dungeon that had appeared in his apartment after his death. According to the information Boris had sent him, an S-rank hunter of the Federation had found the fragment of the origin rune essence a few years ago. He acquired it along with an A+ rank artifact. After clearing the dungeon, however, after obtaining the fragment of the origin rune essence, he tried to figure out how to use it, but no matter what he did, he wasn't able to uncover its purpose. This surprised Evan slightly because the information from Boris stated that there was no available data about this orb, and even those with appraisal skills couldn't see its details. Does that mean Boris and the others couldn't see its information like I can? Evan thought with narrowed eyes, a thoughtful look appearing on his face. He glanced at the small orb in his hand for a moment before turning his head toward Valerie. Let's go, he said and stood up. I will clear the high-level monsters flooding the Earth by the end of tomorrow, he told Boris, and before Boris could react, he disappeared from the room along with Valerie. After leaving the meeting room, he didn't go far and arrived at the roof of the Federation building. No-vel-b-in.c ohm. Hold this, he said, handing the fragment of the origin rune essence to Valerie. Valerie was confused when Evan asked her to hold the small orb, but she didn't refuse and took it in her hand. Can you see its information? He asked once Valerie held the orb. Hearing Evan's question, Valerie tried to look at the orb's information, but after a few attempts, she shook her head. I can't see anything. As expected, Evan nodded and took the orb back from Valerie, looking at the lines of text flashing before him, displaying the information of the origin rune essence. Could it be that I can see the information because I possess the rune of evolution, which is a primordial rune and it can be evolved using this? Or, he muttered and narrowed his eyes. Could it be that someone deliberately did something so that no one could see its information besides me? If it was the former, Evan didn't need to worry about anything, but if it was the latter, he couldn't understand why someone would do something like this. This thing was found in the Blood Dungeon, but the Blood Dungeon disappeared years ago. He muttered to himself, recalling the closed dimension he had seen when he went to the location of the Blood Dungeon. I need to find a way to open that closed dimension. Evan took a deep breath, and when he thought about all the things he needed to do, he suddenly felt a massive headache. The closed dimension at the location of the Blood Dungeon, the black figure who seemed like a hidden mastermind, the portal located in the basement of the Federation building, the Glassifern people who could come to Earth at any time, Winterclaw. Just thinking about the list of problems he needed to solve made him feel like throwing a full-powered attack to destroy the entire planet in one go and get rid of all the problems. This damn planet is so small, so why the hell are there so many big mysteries here? Evan cursed under his breath and threw the fragment of the origin rune essence into his shadow storage. Although he was feeling a strong urge to devour it, the information he received about the origin rune essence clearly stated that he needed to collect all 4 fragments and form a complete origin rune essence if he wanted to evolve a primordial rune. He wasn't sure what would happen if he devoured the fragment without collecting all 4 parts, so he decided not to devour it until he had completed it. After putting away the rune of evolution, Evan looked at Valerie with a serious expression. Come with me for a minute. I need you to verify something for me, he said, and without waiting for her response, he disappeared along with her. In the underground basement of the Federation building, Evan reappeared in front of the portal that his clone had discovered. Is this the dungeon you talked about? He asked Valerie after bringing her to the portal. Valerie examined the portal and, after confirming the surroundings, she nodded her head. Yes, it's the same portal. Evan narrowed his eyes at Valerie's confirmation and cautiously extended his hand towards the portal. As he attempted to push his hand through, he noticed that, unlike his clone, he could enter the portal without any issue. As expected, I couldn't enter earlier because it wasn't the real me but my clone. Evan said to himself with a thoughtful look on his face. However, despite realizing he could enter the portal, he didn't rush inside immediately. During the meeting, the hunters had agreed to provide him with all the information he wanted, but before that, they asked him to clear the high-level monsters that were scattered all over the earth. Evan had no problem with their condition, as it would take him only a few hours to eliminate all the monsters with the help of his shadow undeads. Before entering the dungeon, he wanted to wait for the information Boris would send him, as it would likely include details about the portal. Earlier, when Eclipse had entered the portal, it had been killed instantly by a strange force, so Evan wanted to be as informed as possible before going inside. Let's go back, Evan said to Valerie and deactivated his clone that had already searched the entire basement but found nothing. After deactivating his clone, he left the building and summoned some of his shadow undeads, instructing them to clear the monsters scattered across the earth. After giving the order to his shadow undeads, Evan brought Valerie back to Base City 5, but he didn't stay there and after dropping her, and left immediately as he needed to do something else. Chapter 1095 Danger. Part 2. While Evan's shadow undeads were rapidly clearing the monsters on Earth, he appeared on the island where the Glassifern people, who had come out of the portals, were lying with their souls heavily damaged. Evan glanced at the 5 people lying there and didn't bother to care about them. He found a relatively open place on the island and called Elysia out from his shadow storage. Are you sure you want me to erase the traces of the illusionary world? Evan asked in a serious voice after summoning Elysia. Yes, I don't need it. Just like when I broke through to rank 1 and rank 2 and created my domain and zone, I'm sure I will receive information about a more powerful illusionary world during my breakthrough to rank 3, so I don't need that information, Elysia explained. All right, Evan nodded and looked at the light life orb in his hand. Name, Light Life Orb. Rank, Beginner level rank 4. Type, Consumable. Energy type, Light Energy. He had created this light life orb after killing the rank 4 elf who had kidnapped the small stone man. Because of its compatibility with Elysia, it could directly increase her rank to rank 4. But when he told Elysia to absorb it, she first asked him to erase the traces of the illusionary world of the rank 4 elf from it. If she absorbed it without erasing the traces of the illusionary world created by the rank 4 elf, the illusionary world she would condense during her breakthrough to rank 3 would be similar to that of the elf, and she didn't want that. According to her, just as she had received information about her domain and zone during her breakthroughs to rank 1 and 2, she would receive information about a more powerful illusionary world during her breakthrough to rank 3, so she asked Evan to erase the traces of the illusionary world of the elf from it. As Evan held the light life orb, the small amount of bloodline power that he had recovered in the past 2 days moved, and he used the lifesteal ability to erase the traces of the illusionary world from the orb. In just a few seconds, he erased the traces of the illusionary world, and the glow around the light life orb dimmed slightly. Here you go, Evan said after erasing the traces and tossed the light life orb to Elysia. Elysia caught the orb and without hesitation, tossed it into her mouth. As the light life orb entered her mouth, it melted into a burst of energy and rushed inside her body. Boom! A powerful aura emanated from Elysia's body, and her rank started to increase. To ensure her breakthrough didn't destroy the entire island, Evan created a wind barrier around them and completely isolated the area. As Elysia's rank increased and her aura became more and more powerful, Evan suddenly started to feel nervous for some reason. What's going on? He frowned when he suddenly felt uneasy, and his spiritual senses immediately spread, reaching the location of the 6 portals from which Shaldik and the others had emerged. There are no fluctuations, so this uneasiness shouldn't be related to those portals. He muttered, trying to see if there was anything wrong around him. He looked at the 5 Glassifern people lying on the island like idiots, but there was nothing wrong with them either. Is it related to her? Evan stopped looking around and glanced at Elysia, whose aura was continuously increasing and had already reached mid-level rank 3. Because of Elysia's unusual condition, I'm certain that before I turned her into a shadow undead, she used to be the essence clone of a powerful elf from Utopia. If I'm not wrong, the reason I was able to turn her into a shadow undead even though she was an essence clone is closely related to my race, Eltern, which has deep connections with demons and elves. Evan thought inwardly and narrowed his eyes. Could it be that now that she's about to become more powerful, something will go wrong because of her unusual situation? Just as Evan was lost in his thoughts. Boom! A powerful aura erupted from Elysia, and despite the wind barrier that covered the surroundings, the entire island shook. At the same time, strange energy fluctuations started to emit from Elysia's body, giving Evan a dangerous feeling. Something is wrong. Evan's face changed when he felt the strange energy fluctuations coming from Elysia's body, and soon he noticed the space above her was warping and twisting as if something was trying to come through by tearing apart the space. Feeling the danger he had sensed earlier reaching its peak, Evan didn't hesitate and immediately summoned the halberd of destruction. As the jet-black halberd appeared in his hand, Evan poured his primordial shadow energy into it without reservation. Burrs! The jet-black halberd started to shake due to the large amount of primordial shadow energy and released a terrifying aura of destruction that nearly tore apart the fabric of space within thousands of kilometers. Evan looked at the space above Elysia, where it was warping and twisting, and suddenly, bang! The space barrier above Elysia's head shattered, and the phantom of a beautiful elf with long golden hair and green eyes emerged from it. As the phantom appeared from the shattered space, a powerful aura spread in all directions. November LBJNN. The phantom had just emerged and hadn't even had a chance to look around properly when suddenly, its powerful aura was overwhelmed by a surge of destructive energy that shook the surroundings. Startled, the phantom quickly turned her head toward the source of the destructive energy, only to see the shadow of a jet-black halberd rapidly growing larger in her vision. Wah! The phantom of the golden-haired elf didn't even get a chance to utter a word before the halberd of destruction struck her, shattering her body into countless pieces and instantly causing her to disappear. Just before the phantom fully vanished, it saw Evan standing some distance away from her previous location, holding the halberd of destruction with a baffled look on his face as if stunned that the phantom had been destroyed with just a single blow. While Evan was standing with a baffled look, inside the forbidden land of Utopia, not far from where Evan had previously escaped using his title, Illustraea opened her eyes and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1096 Treasure Trove Part 1. I failed to establish a connection again. Illustraea muttered in a low voice as she wiped the streak of blood flowing from the corner of her mouth and looked at her monarch core, which was slowly ceasing to glow. The last time, I failed to react in time when someone created a domain similar to mine. And when the same person created a zone, they were in a different dimension inside the tomb of the ancient, so I failed again. This time, when she created the illusionary world similar to mine, I nearly succeeded in establishing a connection with her, but she said to herself and sighed deeply. She recalled the jet-black halberd that obliterated her phantom and her face turned serious. What was that thing? Although it was just my phantom, for it to be destroyed in a single move, whatever that was, it must be something extraordinary, Illustraea muttered in a low voice as she stood up. Because her phantom was destroyed the moment it appeared on Earth, she hadn't been able to take a proper look around. Evan was also using a fake appearance, and since her phantom had only taken a fleeting glance at him, she didn't recognize him. That guy looked quite stunned after he destroyed my phantom, as if he was shocked that it was destroyed with just a single attack. Illustraea's face darkened as she remembered Evan's baffled expression. He was definitely thinking I was too weak. Thinking he was looking down on her, Illustraea felt her hands itching and her eyes flashed with a sharp light. Let's see if he can still look down on me when I see him next time, she said and looked at the raging sandstorm around her. Where the hell did that bastard disappear to? I can sense his lingering aura here, but there are no other traces of his presence as if he vanished from the world after coming here. Illustraea searched the area where Evan had disappeared using his title, and the more she looked around, the more frustrated she became. Did he realize I was coming and run away? She muttered, her deep green eyes glowing brightly. She looked around the area once again and soon noticed the aura of the rank 5 stoneman. That gray metallic aura. It seems to be the aura of a stoneman, she said and her lips curled upward into a slight smile. So he went with the stoneman tribe, huh? After noticing the aura of the rank 5 stoneman, Illustraea's eyes glowed even brighter and she immediately found the direction that aura had moved. After confirming the direction, she took one last look at the place where Evan had disappeared and quickly left from there, heading toward the stoneman tribe's territory. What the hell was that? Evan muttered with a dumbfounded look on his face as he watched the destroyed phantom disappear without leaving a trace. He wasn't shocked because a phantom had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, nor was he shocked by her powerful aura. The reason he was shocked was because of how easily he destroyed the phantom. Before the phantom emerged, he had felt a deep sense of crisis as if he was about to face an extremely powerful enemy. But to his Surprise, that supposedly powerful enemy was blown away with just a single strike of his halberd. He took a deep breath to calm down and a thoughtful look appeared on his face. Was I overthinking? Maybe the danger I felt was just me being overly paranoid, he thought aloud, but upon recalling the dangerous feeling he had experienced earlier, he dismissed this thought. There's no way it was just my imagination. That sense of danger definitely came from that phantom. Evan thought to himself, glancing at Elysia, who was still in the middle of evolving. If the danger I felt from that phantom wasn't because of its strength, then maybe there was something else wrong with that phantom, like it was planning to curse me or something once it fully manifested. N-O-V-E-N.C-O-M. Evan rubbed his eyebrows and finally shook his head, deciding not to think too much about it. He took a deep breath and his expression turned deadly serious because although the phantom had only manifested for a brief moment before being destroyed by him, he still clearly saw its appearance. That phantom was very similar to Illustraea, one of the 5 monarchs. Evan had seen Illustraea's photo in the closed world of dryads, so when he saw the phantom, he recognized her immediately. However, because he saw her for just a brief moment, he wasn't 100% sure if she was really Illustraea or not. If she is really Illustraea and Elysia used to be her essence clone, then... He looked at Elysia and felt as if he had just added another problem to his list of troubles. Damn, what kind of bullshit life am I living? Every day I encounter a new problem for no reason, he cursed under his breath and sat down. Because Elysia was creating her illusionary world on her own. Unlike Zorda, who had directly taken Anderson's illusionary world, she hadn't finished her evolution even after 5 hours. Around 9 hours later, Evan received a message from his shadow undeads that they had cleared all the high-level monsters across the earth. Once Evan received the message, he immediately called Boris, who confirmed the situation with the monsters using satellite images and then sent all the information Evan had asked for. Finally, Evan said with a sigh once he received the information from Boris. He opened the information that Boris sent him through his bracelet, and the first thing he looked for was what had happened to his body after it burst into energy following his death. Recalling the strange pattern that had appeared on his face after his death, he wanted to know what exactly had happened to his body and if it was still intact. Unfortunately, he found nothing about it. According to the information, after his body burst into energy, it completely disappeared, leaving nothing behind. Well, so I died without any burial, huh? He said with a sigh, but when he looked at the next piece of information, his eyes lit up. There is actually information about that black figure. Chapter 1097 Treasure Trove, Part 2. There is actually information about that black figure. Evan's eyes lit up when he saw this as he carefully read the information Boris had sent him. In just a few seconds, he finished reading the basic details about the black figure. He meets them at the end of every month. He muttered while rubbing his chin. According to the information Boris sent him, 9 years ago, when the situation for humans had just stabilized after the dungeon outbreaks and the Federation was created, a figure shrouded in strange black energy approached all the high-level hunters. This figure informed them that the situation on Earth would continue to worsen and that many new high-level dungeons would soon appear. According to it, these new high-level dungeons would not only be more difficult to clear, but the monsters emerging from them would also be more violent. Because of its strange appearance, it was obvious that no hunter believed in its words. However, just a few days later, several new dungeons appeared on Earth. There were a total of 5 new dungeons, ranging from C to B rank. Although these dungeons were classified as C to B rank, the energy fluctuations from them were far more violent than those of normal dungeons of the same rank. Due to the dungeon rules, which only allowed people of the same rank or lower rank than the dungeon to enter, teams of C and B rank hunters were sent in to clear them. However, all the teams that entered these new dungeons were wiped out. When these dungeons eventually had breakouts because no one was able to clear them, and the monsters rushed out, people finally understood why the hunters who entered to clear these dungeons were not able to clear them. It turned out that the monsters emerging from the dungeons were eldritch monsters. Although the hunters on Earth had never seen them before, they immediately recognized the horror of these creatures because of the eldritch energy that surrounded them. Not only could the eldritch energy mess with their minds, but it could also erode their mana, making it difficult to harm the eldritch monsters using their skills. To kill the eldritch monsters that came out of the dungeons, the Federation had to mobilize high-level hunters. In order to kill the B-rank eldritch monsters, they needed the help of at least one A-rank hunter. Reading up to this point, Evan couldn't help but think about the dungeon raid he had witnessed 2 days ago. As I guessed at that time, the reason those hunters allowed a dungeon breakout was because they didn't want to enter the dungeon due to the effects of the eldritch energy that filled it. He muttered and continued reading. Because the first Eldritch dungeons that appeared were only C to B rank, they were quickly dealt with by high-level hunters. But when those hunters remembered the words of the Black Figure, warning them that more high-level dungeons would appear on Earth, they all found themselves in a difficult position. Just thinking about an S-rank Eldritch dungeon gave them goosebumps, as they were certain it would be very difficult for them to clear something like that. If an S-rank Eldritch dungeon were to appear in the middle of a city and a breakout occurred, they were sure that city would be doomed. When Boris and the other high-level hunters were in this pinch, the Black Figure appeared before them again and offered to help. According to the Black Figure, it could tell them where the Eldritch dungeons would appear. To ensure they could kill S-rank Eldritch monsters more easily, it even told them it could help increase the rank of their core to S+. Evan paused when he saw this information, and recalling what Valerie had told him about S+ rank hunters, his expression turned strange. "Don't tell me that dungeon portal in the underground basement," he muttered in a low voice, and as he read further, his guess was confirmed. According to the information Boris sent him, the dungeon portal in the underground basement was indeed created by the Black Figure. It wasn't a natural dungeon that appeared but was created by the figure to help hunters become S+ rank hunters. According to the figure's words, as long as they could clear the dungeon, they would receive a reward that could help them become S+ rank hunters. However, if they failed to clear the dungeon on their first attempt, they wouldn't be able to enter again. Boris was the first to clear the dungeon, and when he confirmed that they could indeed become S+ rank hunters by clearing it, other hunters also tried to clear it. But until now, only 8 people, including Valerie, have succeeded in clearing it. After creating the dungeon in the basement, the Black Figure disappeared and now only appears at the end of each month to inform the hunters about the new Eldritch dungeons that will appear on Earth. This has been going on for a few years now, and each month, the number of Eldritch dungeons appearing on Earth is increasing. As Evan read further, he also discovered the source behind the high-level formations and the weapons he had seen in the Federation building, and to his surprise, those items came from the Blood Dungeon. According to the information, the Blood Dungeon was one of the few dungeons that provided very generous rewards each time someone cleared it. Most of the recipes for potions, materials for formations, and instructions on how to create them came from the Blood Dungeon. NOVELBJN.com. It was as if, before the Blood Dungeon disappeared, it had been a treasure trove for all the hunters. Even though the dungeon's clearing difficulty was very high, the rewards were far more generous than those from any other dungeon. Evan was quite stunned to learn that a dungeon could offer rewards far exceeding its rank, but when he reached the next section of the information, he felt his mind going numb and his jaw nearly dropped to the ground. Chapter 1098 Heart of Origin Part 1. Are you kidding me? Evan muttered with a stunned look on his face as he stared at the holographic screen in front of him. Since the moment he arrived on Earth, Evan had been curious about the number of high-level hunters here. Compared to the Aurora world, the number of high-level hunters, such as A rank, A+ rank, and S rank, was quite high on Earth. It had only been a little over 15 years, but the number of high-level hunters here had already exceeded the number in Aurora world. And now, looking at the information in front of him, he finally understood how this had happened. According to the information that Boris sent him, when everything changed after his body burst into energy that covered the entire Earth, some people, such as Boris, Leon, Simon, and many other hunters directly broke through to higher levels and became high-level hunters. When the world changed, Leon directly broke through to C rank and awakened the Flame Sorcerer class. In the following years, he advanced through the ranks quickly, and just 4 years after the world changed, he became an S rank hunter. If Leon was already lucky to have directly become a C rank hunter when the world changed, there were others who were even luckier, such as the current head of the Federation, Boris. According to the information, when everything changed, he directly became a B+ rank hunter. It was also mentioned that a guy named Yi Chen directly broke through to A+ rank when the world changed and, after a few months, became the first S rank hunter in the world. When he became the first S rank hunter, people thought he was the son of destiny and would save the world from the monsters. Unfortunately, after becoming an S rank hunter, this son of destiny was eaten by a sea monster during a fight and died. Evan read everything with a strange look on his face, his eyes twitching, especially when he read about Yi Chen. NOVELBJN.com. He took some deep breaths to clear his mind and sighed inwardly. To think these guys received free gifts when everything changed. He muttered to himself, thinking about the pathetic life he had lived in Aurora world during his first 2 years. Damn, my body burst into a wave of energy and turned people into high-level hunters while I didn't receive any benefits after getting my transmigration ticket. Evan said in a low voice and felt he had been scammed. He looked at the other information that Boris had sent him, but it was just about some strange dungeons or places on Earth that the hunters found unusual. Evan didn't care too much about those things and soon finished reading everything. Once he finished reading the information that Boris sent him, a thoughtful look appeared on his face. From the looks of it, that black figure doesn't seem like a bad guy, and it even helped the hunters quite a bit. Otherwise, with the number of eldritch dungeons that appeared on Earth over the years, it would have been impossible for the hunters to handle them. He muttered to himself. Although increasing the rank of Hunter's Course to S+ rank undoubtedly harms their life force, and the hunters don't know anything about it, from the information that Boris sent him, it was clear that the reason the black figure gave them a way to become S+ rank hunters was so they could stop the eldritch monsters. Without the help of S+ rank hunters, it would have been really difficult for them to handle the high-level eldritch monsters. Though it doesn't seem like a bad guy, I still can't be sure until I meet it and confirm what's going on here. Evan said as he looked at the date. There are still 10 days before this month ends, and that figure comes to meet the hunters to tell them about the upcoming eldritch dungeons. Evan pondered for a moment and sent a message to Boris, telling him to inform him when the figure comes to tell them about the upcoming eldritch dungeons. After sending the message to Boris, he closed the holographic screen and looked at Elysia. From the energy fluctuations, it seems she is almost done. He muttered and waited quietly. Around an hour later, the energy fluctuations coming from Elysia slowly calmed down, and she successfully broke through to rank 4, indicating that after creating her illusionary world, she also formed her law seal. Once the energy fluctuations around her fully disappeared, Evan walked towards her. "How are you feeling?" he asked in a serious voice, worried that the phantom that appeared earlier might have affected her somehow. "I'm fine," Elysia replied in a light voice and nodded happily, feeling pleased with her increased rank. Evan tried to sense her condition through his connection with her, and when he didn't find anything unusual, he breathed a sigh of relief and asked curiously. "By the way, do you know the identity of the ghost that appeared earlier?" Elysia nodded at Evan's question. "Although I hadn't awakened all of my memories when I received the information about the illusionary world that I created earlier, I found out it's related to Illustraea." Sure enough, Evan muttered, not surprised by Elysia's words. He sighed inwardly, and silently added another problem to his long list of troubles. "Since you have become a rank 4 core evolver now, you and Zorda will stay on Earth along with a few other shadow undeads until I come back," Evan said to Elysia as he summoned Zorda and a few other rank 3 shadow undeads. "Master, are you going somewhere?" Elysia asked in a surprised voice when she heard Evan. Evan nodded. "I need to check out a dungeon, but I am concerned that while I am gone, a few more Glassifern people might come out of the portal, so I'm leaving you guys here to take care of them." Chapter 1099 Heart of Origin Part 2. Evan stood in front of a shining portal, located in the underground basement of the Federation building. This portal is reacting very differently from what Valerie told me and what I read in the information Boris sent me. Evan muttered in a low voice as he recalled what had happened to Eclipse when he entered the portal. Earlier, since this dungeon was created by that black figure and is not a naturally formed dungeon, there must be something special about it, he speculated as he summoned one of his shadow undeads and ordered it to enter the portal. The shadow undead easily passed through the portal, but just a second later, similar to what happened when Eclipse entered, Evan lost his connection with the shadow undead. As expected, he sighed, not surprised by the death of his shadow undead. He summoned the undead again using World Essence and asked what had happened. And just like Eclipse, according to the shadow undead, it had also been destroyed by a force before it could reach the other end. "Looks like I will have to go in myself if I want to know what's in there," Evan said, taking a deep breath and stepping forward. As he touched the portal, he felt a suction force pulling him in, and before he could react, his body was sucked inside. "This feels different from a normal dungeon entry," Evan muttered as he found himself inside a space turbulence area, moving forward at a rapid speed. In Aurora World, he had entered many dungeons before, and each time, he would immediately reach the other end of the portal in seconds. But this time, instead of reaching the other end, he was passing through a space turbulence area that seemed like a boundary between two dimensions. The space around him was in complete turmoil, and if it weren't for a faint layer of energy covering his body, Evan was sure that even if he hadn't died due to his strong body, he would have suffered serious injuries. "Looks like the energy layer protecting me didn't appear around my shadow undeads, which is why they were instantly killed upon entering the portal," Evan said to himself, observing the dark purple-blue space turbulence around him. He was now certain that this portal was leading him to a different place than the one Valerie and the other S+ rank hunters had entered when they became S+ rank hunters. The reason he was sure about this was that if there had been a space turbulence area upon entering the portal, the information Boris had sent him would have mentioned something about it. Even if Boris didn't include it in the information, Valerie would have definitely told him when he asked her about this portal. Amid the turbulent space, Evan waited calmly as his body drifted like a helpless wooden log, moving forward. About 3 minutes later, Evan noticed the unstable space turbulence around him becoming more powerful, with dark purple-blue bolts of lightning lashing out everywhere like enraged beasts. Suddenly, some of the dark purple-blue bolts of lightning struck the faint layer of energy covering Evan's body, causing the glow around the energy layer to dim. Evan's heart skipped a beat when he saw this, as he was certain that even a rank 5 core evolver would be seriously injured if struck by these strange lightning bolts. This protective layer wouldn't collapse, right? He muttered in a low voice as he looked at the faint energy layer around him. Unfortunately, as soon as he spoke, a few more bolts of lightning struck the energy layer, creating loud booming sounds amid the chaotic turbulence that attracted even more lightning bolts. N-O-V-E in .C ohm. Suddenly, tens of lightning bolts rushed towards Evan like lightning dragons as if they wanted to destroy him. Fu-K. Evan couldn't help but curse when he saw this, feeling a danger like never before engulf his body. Boom, boom, boom. The lightning bolts struck Evan one after another, sending devastating shockwaves in all directions and blowing away his body backwards. The faint energy layer that covered him began to crack under the onslaught of the lightning bolts, with small sparks even entering the energy layer, directly coming into contact with Evan's body and making him feel numb. Fu-K, what kind of bullshit dungeon is this? Evan cursed under his breath and used his primordial shadow energy to cover his body. At the same time, he summoned the halberd of destruction and looked at the energy layer covering him, which was about to crack. Just when the energy layer was on the verge of collapse, and Evan thought he was in deep trouble. Thump, thump, thump. His heart started to beat wildly and the outline of the rune of origin covering his heart lit up. The moment the outline of the rune of origin lit up, a strange energy wave emitted from his body, and the dark purple-blue lightning bolts that had been moving around him like enraged beasts suddenly calmed down and moved away from him. Evan was surprised when he saw this, and a look of confusion appeared on his face, not understanding what was happening. But soon, he noticed the unusual activity with his heart of origin and remembered what Azeroth had told him when he asked him about it in the Tomb of the Ancient. Chap. 958. The heart of origin is something we were born with. It signifies our status as the origin holder. Without the heart of origin, you won't be able to enter the origin universe. Azeroth's words rang out inside his mind, and seeing what was happening with his heart of origin, Evan's already fast-beating heart skipped a beat. Don't tell me this portal is leading me to the origin universe and these lightning bolts stopped attacking me because I have the heart of origin, which allows me to enter the origin universe. As Evan finished speaking, a bright white light flashed in front of his eyes and he disappeared from the space turbulence area. Chapter 1100 Destroy the World. The moment Evan left the space turbulence area, he found himself standing in the middle of a deserted place. Before being thrown out of the space turbulence area, he had heightened his senses to the maximum limit possible, so that he could immediately react if he encountered any danger after leaving the space turbulence area. However, after leaving the space turbulence area, he didn't see any sign of life. All he saw was dry land with cracks running through it as if the land hadn't been soaked in water for hundreds of years. Deep brown-colored dry grass was growing in some of the cracked areas of land, and what surprised Evan was the fact that even though the brown grass looked dry, he could feel a strong concentration of world essence inside it. Not only that, despite the area around him appearing deserted without any sign of life, the density of world essence in the area was very high. He raised his head and saw that the sky was red-orange in color, and for some reason, just looking at it irritated him, as if something was trying to mess with his mind. Evan had just looked around at his surroundings and confirmed there was no danger when suddenly, he felt a strong rejection force enveloping his body as if something was trying to push him away. Evan frowned when he felt a strange force enveloping his body, but before he could react, his body responded on its own, and his appearance changed, returning to his Eltern form. As he reverted to his Eltern form, he felt the rejection force weaken significantly, and although he could still feel a faint sense of rejection, it was no longer a problem and he could completely ignore it. This sense of rejection, it's coming from this world. It's like this world is treating me as an invader and wants to throw me out, Evan muttered with a look of interest on his face as he analyzed the faint force that was still trying to expel him. No vel b in .c ohm. You have entered the artificially created world, Azragoth. Just as he was analyzing the force that enveloped his body, he received a notification. Artificially created world. Evan raised an eyebrow, keenly noticing the word world instead of dungeon. He already had some doubts when he saw the portal in the underground basement, as that portal looked like a projection instead of a real portal, and he felt there was something off about it. But now, seeing the notification that said he had entered an artificially created world instead of a dungeon, his suspicions were confirmed that there was definitely something wrong with that portal, and it had brought him to a different world, similar to how the projection of the Tower of Ascension in the Aurora world had led him to a world domain. Was this world created by that black figure? Evan muttered, recalling the information he had read earlier. According to it, this portal was artificially created by the black figure to help hunters increase their rank to S+, so it was very likely that this world was also created by him as well. Since this world was created by that black figure, does that mean I'm not in the Origin universe? Evan suddenly thought about the strange reaction his Heart of Origin showed earlier, which had made him think he was going to the Origin universe. But according to the notification, it was clear that he was in a world called Azragoth, so he couldn't understand why his Heart of Origin had reacted earlier and why those bolts of lightning had stopped attacking him after sensing the energy waves released by his Heart of Origin. Tasks have been updated. Just as Evan was lost in thought, some notifications flashed before his eyes. Complete the following tasks to leave the Azragoth world. 1. Kill the Emperor Velgoth. 2. Close the world passage. 3. Destroy the artificial world, Azragoth. Reward for completing the tasks, Origin Essence. What the fouke is this? Evan stared at the notifications with a blank look on his face and used his spiritual senses to confirm that he wasn't inside a high-end VR capsule, playing a game. Only after confirming that there was nothing wrong with his consciousness and that he was in Azragoth world with his real body instead of an artificial body created by VR technology did he sigh in relief and look back at the notifications. Kill the Emperor, close the world passage, and destroy the world. Evan's expression turned even more strange after reading the tasks, and he couldn't understand what was going on. Let's not even talk about the fact that he didn't know who Emperor Velgoth was or where this so-called world passage was located. The last task was the one that made him completely speechless. Destroy the world, he muttered under his breath, raising his head to look at the red-orange sky. Since I came here through the portal created by that black figure, these tasks must also be issued by him. But why does he want me to destroy this world? Wasn't he the one who created it? Evan was utterly confused by the strange turn of events. Before entering the portal, he thought he would be sent to a dungeon, but instead of a dungeon, he was sent to a strange world. Now, he had to kill an emperor he didn't know and destroy the entire world. Things had escalated so quickly that even Evan couldn't help but feel like he was dreaming. After looking at the 3 tasks in front of him for a while, Evan took a deep breath and closed the notifications. Since there's a task to kill an emperor, it must mean that there are people living in this world, he said as shadow wings unfolded behind his back. I should first find a place populated with people to gather some information before doing anything else. Evan was about to leave to look for someone to gather information, but before he could, he suddenly felt something, and the shadow wings behind his back disappeared. He closed his eyes and stood still without moving. After nearly 2 hours, Evan suddenly opened his eyes, which were now shining brightly. He quickly opened his status window, and upon looking at it, his lips curled into a huge grin. It seems this place is not as bad as it looks. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of void. 30.003% right pointing arrow 31.05%. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and a comment. See you all in the next one.